to some notice as well. She just don't read it.
They're reading it.
I know.
What do they do with the plastic bags? Just one around
Good afternoon. The hearing is about to resume, so please take your seats. No photographs, filming or recording are allowed in the hearing room. Please ensure that all phones and other devices are switched to silent, including volume controls on laptops. No food or drink except for water is to be consumed in the hearing room. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This afternoon's proceedings are being transmitted on the live link, but only after a 15-minute delay. Those with mobile telephones may use them to transmit what they hear in the hearing room, but only after 15 minutes have elapsed since the event that they're describing. They may not be used for recording or photography. Yes.
Mr. Walton, I'd like to now move to explore the meeting of the 14th of August 1998 with HN81. First of all, the genesis of the meeting. How is it that the meeting came about?
So I can't be certain how it came about. I previously said to Mr. Ellison that I'd met Bob Lambert. I know that Bob Lambert arranged the meeting. I can't be certain exactly how it came about.
Okay. When were you first made aware of the possibility of the meeting with HN81?
As best as I can tell, so around the week of around 10th, the week before the meeting, so that would be the 10th to 14th, around that week.
So if you met on the 14th, so somewhere between the 7th and the 14th?
I think it was the same week, so it would be I think Monday's the 10th.
Did you seek out the meeting or were you approached?
No, I was approached. I can be certain of that.
And who made first contact about that?
Well, the only contact I can remember was with Bob Lambert.
In your account to Mr. Ellison in October 2013, you referred to being contacted by Colin Black. If I could just take you to what you said in 2013 first, please. If I could bring up B56, that's MPS 0723183 at page 16, please. And so, sorry, that's B56. Thank you very much. So, starting at line 15, you are asked about Colin Black, and you say he's commander of Special Branch in 1998, according to this. Yes, he was. He was acting commander of Special Branch 98. I recall a conversation with him, and I can't remember if it was in person or on the phone. I think that it was in person, where he called me up. I remember something to the effect of, "You're on the Lawrence Review team," because I knew Colin because I'd worked extensively with him in Special Branch. He had also given me a commissioner's commendation for something I had done. He was the commander, SOI, at Special Branch, so then it was granted by the commissioner. That was Paul Condon's era. Colin said something to the effect of, "Well, you're on the Lawrence Review team. We've got some coverage, as you can imagine, on the periphery around the Lawrence family, because we are concerned about extremist groups infiltrating the Lawrence campaign, and we are also concerned about extremism on the back of the Lawrence campaign driving public order." So he said, "We need a conduit to ensure that anything you pick up, particularly from the SDS, can be fed in to support your reinvestigation of Lawrence, of Menson and Ricky Reel. Because again, they were obviously similar cases because of race issues, as well as incompetency issues. We need to be absolutely certain that John Grieve got the whole story and the whole picture. And as you know, Richard, we've got good coverage." And then overleaf on page 17. Foot of 15 says, as Colin basically said, "Look, we'll do it. It will not be on paperwork. It will be personal briefings to you." I said, "That's fine." He said, "Can I be confident that anything will be passed into John Grieve so that the Met can be assured that we have that coverage?" This conversation that you recount to Mr. Ellison, was that before or after you met HN81?
I can't be certain. I think it might have been the conversation that led to the minute of the 14th of September, so this would have been then, therefore, after the meeting. The minute that refers to ad hoc briefings, etc. But I can't be certain, because I had, over that period of time, Colin Black was my OCU commander. I'd had a conversation with him about moving to the Lawrence team. I'd had a conversation with him at some stage around moving from Lawrence team to CO24, because that would have been his decision. But as regards this conversation, as remembered speaking to Mr. Ellison, I can't be certain when it was, but it now resonates much more with the minute he wrote on the 14th of the 9th.
Now, if that is so, that would be when you are more likely to have been in CO24. Is that right?
Oh yes.
In your account to Mr. Ellison, you explain that Colin Black says you're on the Lawrence review team, and that he knew you.
Yeah, I mean,
does that pin that earlier?
Well, I'm trying to remember events. Obviously, 16 years later, in an interview where, I'd had no pre-disclosure of anything, so I'm trying to give my best account to Mr. Ellison at that time. I think it's important I say I can't be sure about when this conversation took place.
Although it is some time after 1998 that you're seen by Mr. Ellison, it is now even further away. So,
yes,
is it more likely that that earlier account is accurate?
I have to be honest, I can't be certain about that. I don't want to mislead the inquiry.
So I presume you also can't assist definitively as to whether the conversation with Mr. Black took place before or after you spoke to Bob Lambert about the meeting?
I can't remember if I spoke to Mr. Black before the meeting. Obviously, Mr. Black has referred to this, so has NH58, I think, who's also said he had a conversation with Colin Black before the meeting. As regards this conversation here, I can't be certain when it happened.
You said to Ellison, if you go to page 19 of the transcript at line 29, I can't remember exactly. Sorry, it's the page before, so the PDF page 19. I think that is folio page 18. Bottom of folio page 18. I can't remember exactly who exactly prompted the meeting, but I think it might have come from their end. I think that it may have been that I bumped into Bob at some stage, because Bob occasionally, of course, in his role as head of the unit, was seen at the yard. Whoever was in charge of SDS would be floating around on the floors of Special Branch and at Scotland Yard doing the bridging between SDS and SO12. Again, does that assist with your recollection of how that meeting came apart? Was it a chance meeting with Bob Lambert?
No, I did caveat all of this with Mr. Ellison with words like, I think it might have been. And so I don't want to speculate today when I'm not sure. All I can be certain about is that Mr. Lambert arranged the meeting. The meeting, if I had bumped into him in the lift, it might have been that was around the arrangement of the meeting. But I don't recall speaking to. I don't know actually how it came about.
Because there's a difference in caveating. I don't remember exactly. I can't remember who exactly prompted the meeting, with actually coming up with a suggestion which you have a broad understanding of how it came apart. So do you currently have no broad understanding of how this meeting came to be?
All I can be certain of is I saw Lambert before the meeting. So it wasn't at the meeting. I saw him before the meeting at some stage when the meeting was arranged.
We've looked at the comment where Mr. Black may have said you're on the Lawrence review team. Mm-hmm. Your account to Mr. Ellison doesn't refer to you correcting him and saying, well, actually, no, I'm on CO24 now. Do you know why you didn't make that correction?
Because I'm trying to remember something for the first time 16 years later. And to be fair, I did stress to Mr. Ellison that, I was transitioning from Lawrence review team to CO24. But it was a long time ago, even then.
While we have this document on screen, could we go to page 19, please? at line 14. You say, I do remember there were concerns around the Nation for Islam and the Movement for Justice, and those two groups then, there was lots of concern that they were hijacking the Lawrence inquiry, and a genuine concern. That was in my time with the Lawrence Review team. I think that even Paul Condon was worried that because we felt also on the Lawrence Review team that there was a lot of distortion going on in the public domain. We felt that, yes, effectively, that potentially the media was being manipulated by some of our extremists for their purposes, and as a result, there was not accurate reporting in the papers about, for instance, all those three aspects: corruption, incompetence, and racism, particularly racism. We felt the Met was effectively being, well, the story was being distorted, that there was not an accurate reflection of what was happening in the inquiry. You say there that during your time on the Lawrence Review team, there were lots of concerns about Nation of Islam and Movement for Justice. What were the concerns within the Metropolitan Police Service that the Nation of Islam and MFJ was seeking to, as you say, hijack the Lawrence inquiry?
Well, so on the 29th of June, as I'm sure the inquiry is aware, the Nation of Islam entered the chamber of the inquiry. It had to be suspended, and a police officer was assaulted, and later a member of Nation of Islam was convicted of that assault. So we were concerned about that.
But is that the same as hijacking the campaign or hijacking the inquiry?
Well, I think bringing the inquiry to a standstill when it had to be suspended through their presence, a physical presence, yes. With regards to Movement for Justice, there were protests outside the inquiry that were quite vociferous. So, yes, both those two organisations were, I mean, in the media, actually. It was sort of fairly well reported upon.
And what was the feeling within the review team in terms of that, in terms of hijack?
Well, I think the report, it's sort of public record that there was media coverage on both those groups, as I remember.
Indeed, but the inquiry continued.
Yes.
Evidence continued to be heard.
Yes.
How is it hijacking?
Well, because the Nation of Islam brought the inquiry to a standstill through the presence. So I mean, that's a strong word, hijacking, but the inquiry was stopped. There was violence, and the next day, of course, there was even more violence.
But broadly, it's lawful protest, isn't it? By groups like Movement for Justice.
No, I don't think physical assault of a police officer in a public inquiry is lawful protest. No, I don't. As that's regards to Nation of Islam, as regards Movement for Justice, it was vociferous. Some of that might have been lawful protest. I don't know, particularly whether we saw any disruption in the inquiry from Movement for Justice.
And were those concerns shared widely within the review team?
Well, we were following the inquiry on a daily basis because we were following the evidence. So the review team would discuss all these matters. And, of course, they related to, the fairness, proportionality. We were trying to be objective. We were asking ourselves challenging questions, such as the ones you were asking. Is it lawful protest? Is there? Do we need to be concerned about this? I think there was I think the Nation of Islam activity on the 29th of June was a seminal moment, and then obviously the next day was a turning point in terms of concerns about violence and protest and disorder in and around the inquiry.
You mentioned Paul Condon to Mr. Ellison and his particular concerns. Was that something that you were basing on direct knowledge?
No.
Was that something that came to you via your managers?
Possibly. I don't recall. But obviously, Sir Paul Condon this was a national front page news story in most of the newspapers for some time around that period.
But Sir Paul Condon, at the time, as he was at the time, being worried about the hijacking of the inquiry, that seems like fairly specific knowledge. Is that seems to have, would that have been widely known at the time?
Sorry, what he would be?
Paul Condon's concern about groups hijacking the inquiry.
Yes.
Would that be something that would have been public knowledge at that time, or would that have come internally to you through channels in the
I think it's public knowledge, yes.
Do you recall any of your managers communicating to you particular thoughts of Lord Condon on the hijack point?
No, I think everybody was concerned about the level of unrest, particularly on those 2 days, and what that meant for the future of the inquiry. That was the 29th and 30th of June. We obviously had another 3 weeks of the inquiry till it went into recess on the 20th of July. So there were legitimate concerns by everybody in the Lawrence Review team, and I'm sure by the senior management from Bob Quick and above up to the Commissioner. But I can't speak for them because I was a sergeant at the time.
Acting Detective Inspector.
Acting Inspector, what it be.
Returning to the organising of the meeting, we believe that you spoke to Bob Lambert directly.
Yes.
In your witness statement, you say you can't be certain how the meeting originated, and that you may have met, and that previously you'd suggested it may have been after a meeting with Bob Lambert in the lift lobby at Scotland Yard. In your witness statement, to be fair to you, you say you cannot now recall that detail. Is that still the same today?
Yes, it's the same
nothing you've
today,
seen has
yes.
jogged your memory on that?
No, it's the same today. I've tried to sort of think it through, but I don't want to mislead the inquiry.
Would that be usual to have been invited to a meeting with an undercover officer on the basis of a chance meeting?
It wasn't completely unusual for me. So I heard Mr. Greaves comment on this yesterday, where he said it was unusual. I was on C Squad in 1990. I think it's the 31st of March 1990 when the poll tax riots happened, and I was on the extreme right wing desk at the time, and post the riots, because we were trying to identify those that had committed serious criminality.
I'm just going to stop you there. We will come back to the poll tax riots in due course.
Okay.
I would like to just continue for the moment with this point about the genesis of the meeting.
Yes.
Back to the Ellison transcript, if we may, please. So Beath at 56, page 20 and line 5. And you say, line 5... I think that it might have been a chance meeting with Bob Lambert, where he would have said, I think that he might have said something like, well, if it helps, would it help to meet the actual operative in the field? Mm-hmm. I think that it might be that. I think that I said, yes, Bob, I think that would help, because it would allow me to contextualise what is actually going on out there, because we're getting all sorts of feeds, and to speak to a person actually in the field would probably be as good as it gets. I think that it might have been him suggesting it, me accepting, and then from there it happened. Mm-hmm. Well, let's take it in stages. Did you know that Bob Lambert was the DI for the SDS?
I think I did, yes.
From your previous experience within Special Branch, you were aware of the SDS as a unit?
Yes.
We've heard quite a lot of evidence about the importance of maintaining the secrecy surrounding the SDS, but the meeting that you're suggesting may have happened here seems to be quite an open discussion surrounding the units and surrounding deployment of undercover officers. Does that strike you as unusual?
No.
Was it the sort of thing that would have been discussed in the lobby at New Scotland Yard? Or would it need to be?
Well, I think I would go back to the caveats I put the head of all these comments. I think it might have been. I hoped that those caveats would demonstrate that I was not certain about these matters. I was trying to be helpful, so I still can't be certain.
But again, there's a caveat. There's a difference between a caveat saying, I think I might have had a conversation with Bob Lambert.
Yeah.
And then, as you seem to be doing here, setting out how that conversation played out. That suggests a bit more knowledge, doesn't it?
Not really, no. I'm trying to remember 16 years later about how this meeting came about, and I'm doing my best. I'm not certain how it came about or when this conversation happened. I know I had one conversation with Bob Lambert before the meeting. It could have been in respect of meeting, the arrangements for the meeting.
Would Bob Lambert have known when you met that you were working on the Stephen Lawrence review team at the time?
I'm not sure Mr. Lambert would have known. He probably would have known me as working with the Lawrence review team, yes, but I don't think he would have made any distinction between that and CO24. I don't think there's any knowledge, actually, in Special Branch about this newly created unit, CO24. It had only been created, obviously, at the end of July, first week of August, as we've discussed. And so I doubt whether anyone in Special Branch would have known about CO24.
But he would have known about Stephen Lawrence review team?
Yes.
And he would have known that you were on it? Or was that something that you...
He had known I'd been involved in it, yes. And that's obviously refers to that in his note, which we'll go into, I'm sure.
Looking at this extract whilst it's still up, you said to Mr. Ellison, we have all sorts of feeds. What were the other feeds that you were receiving, in general terms?
I can't recall, sorry, on that at all. I can't recall what I'm talking from the Lawrence review team perspective. I don't think I am. I can't recall, sorry.
I asked you this morning about the people who were feeding into the Lawrence review team, and it was effectively officers and counsel. I asked whether there were external groups, like focus groups, for example, and you said you didn't. I think you said you didn't know.
No.
You didn't recall any?
Well, the only feeds we were getting were from the inquiry, from officers that were at the inquiry, who were following it in person. If we're talking about the Lawrence review team, but no others.
Was there a channel to bring intelligence to the Stephen Lawrence review team?
No, absolutely not. And I need to stress that, so that there was no crossover between Special Branch Intelligence and the Lawrence review team, as Mr. Quick articulated, I think, yesterday. I mean, none whatsoever.
So no feed-in from Special Branch Intelligence of any type?
Not that I'm aware of, and I think that I would have known. I don't think Mr. Quick, I think he corroborated that as well. So there was no need to, because of obviously our remit had nothing to do with intelligence or needing intelligence, because we were doing a forensic review of the murder investigation and the inquiry. So there was no possible need for any intelligence. It was not our remit or our role to use intelligence. That was entirely the remit of Special Branch under their public order remit.
When Mr. Lambert spoke to Operation Hurton, he describes you as a customer at the time. For context, if we could bring that up, please. That's MPS 0722549, page 3, and so that's B55 in the bundle. And it's the large paragraph at the foot of the page for Mr. Lambert. It speaks of you. Richard Walton was at that time one of us customers. I suppose he was a particular customer with particular requirements, because he was working directly for the Commissioner in relation to the Metropolitan Police response to the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. And before talking about this particular file note, I also recall that Peter Francis, his intelligence around the campaign, was passed to Richard Walton for the same purpose. This is a file note where Richard has actually met with one of the field members. And when I saw this, I didn't sort of put a face to this particular name that's used here, but I can't say file was. Did Mr. Lambert contact you about the meeting because you were already a recipient of SDS intelligence in your role at the Stephen Lawrence review team?
No, and so I can be categorical about this. Mr. Lambert has given evidence that he thought I was the Commissioner's staff officer to this inquiry, which is clearly not true. And in regard to this, I was never a customer at all. I was not posted to the Lawrence Review team in any capacity to do with Special Branch. I was posted to the Lawrence Review team because of a development opportunity around my accelerated promotion and course. I was not a conduit. I was not a customer. I received absolutely no intelligence from Special Branch, and I can be categorical about that. And also, in respect of Peter Francis, I can also be clear on that too. It says here, I recall that Peter Francis, intelligence rank was past Richard Walton. I received no intelligence from Special Branch from anyone, let alone from Peter Francis, who I don't think I've ever met.
If we could return to paragraph 70 in your witness statement, please. That's UCPI 37511, page 27, please. You make the point at the beginning of the fourth line. In any event, the meeting would likely have made sense to me, given that I understood the evolving remit of CO24 was at the time, and the fact that I was in the process of transitioning into that team. Information about race issues and the nexus with public order threats would have been helpful in that context. I think your evidence a little earlier was that Bob Lambert wouldn't have known that you were moving to CO24.
I can't speak as to really what Bob Lambert knew or didn't know, I'm afraid.
Well, I think I'm just thinking about the evidence you've just given this afternoon.
Yeah.
I think your suggestion was that nobody really knew what CO24 was at that time because it was still in embryonic form.
That's correct. And obviously, the fact that he refers to me as the Commissioner's staff officer clearly demonstrates that he didn't know what my role was.
At that early stage, did you know what your role was in CO24? I think you said earlier that you thought you might have a role in intelligence within CO24, but ultimately you ended up working on Op Spectrum.
That's correct, yes.
Finally, in relation to knowledge of your meeting, Sarah Thornton spoke about your meeting with HN81 when she was interviewed by Mr. Ellison. Please can we bring up her transcript, which is MPS 0721575. So that's tab B60 and page 13, please.
Sorry, which line is this? Oh.
Page 13, line 28, please. It's the PDF page 13, so it's at the bottom of the printed page 12, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Line 28, Mr. Ellison. Do you remember Richard Walton being a part of the review team? Miss Thornton. Yes, I do. And I mean, one of the superintendents came to see me last week with the note of the Richard Walton SB meeting. So I still know Richard Walton as well. I was asked whether I was aware that Richard Walton had met with Special Branch, and had I tasked him. I certainly hadn't tasked him, most certainly. I was aware of it, but my explanation of that is that Richard had been on Special Branch, and I suspect it was more self-tasked than anything else. So I think what we can take it is here that Miss Thornton was aware of your meeting with HN81. Did you tell her about the meeting?
I don't recall speaking to Sarah Thornton about that meeting at all. I'm quite surprised to see that. I don't know whether is she referring to the actual meeting? I certainly.
Well, she's referring, I think, to the note of the meeting.
and she's speculating on, I think it was more self-task than anything else, speculation. So
Yes, I think
can't really add to what's there, sorry.
In terms of self-tasking, was that something within your gift, in your role at the time?
No.
So you'd have had to been ordered to go and do
Yes,
X or Y.
the meeting with N81 was not my meeting. There's an innocent explanation that I went because I was asked to go. It has clearly been authorised at a much higher level, at OCU commander level. I dutifully went along as you would.
When you agreed to meet HN81, who did you understand the meeting was to be with?
Lambert and Anne, an undercover officer.
And as you understood it at the time that you decided to go, what was the purpose of the meeting?
The purpose was never explained to me. Obviously, I was aware of the nexus between events around the public inquiry and the evolving remit of CO24. I knew then, as I do now, that the remit of Special Branch around public disorder and gathering intelligence in relation to it. But it wasn't clear what the remit of the meeting was per se, and I wasn't clear whether it was me being briefed or me briefing, because obviously I had the knowledge around institutional racism and the emerging role of CO24, etc. So there was an ambiguity around it. It was not clear what the meeting was for.
If you didn't know what the meeting was for, why did you go?
As I said, because I was asked to go.
By Mr. Lambert?
By Mr. Lambert, but I can't recall whether we had a discussion about who had authorised the meeting. Mr. Lambert talks about a more senior officer, and obviously NH58 has referred to his conversation with OCU Commander Colin Black before the meeting, having a conversation before the meeting. But I wasn't aware of what the remit of the meeting was per se before I went to it.
In relation to self-tasking, you've just explained that self-tasking was not something that you were entitled to do.
No.
Which of your managers authorised you to attend the meeting? Was it Mr. Quick or Mr. Grieve?
Well, remember, I'm on attachment from Special Branch at the time, so Lambert is actually a more senior officer within Special Branch. And now I was obviously transitioning from Special Branch, Lawrence View team to CO24. I was asked to attend the meeting and I attended it. But it's a more senior officer within Special Branch, if you like.
But actually of the same rank, really?
Well, I wasn't the substantively inspector at that time.
But would not Mr. Grieve or Mr. Quick want to know what you were doing with your time?
Well, as I've articulated, I moved on from Lawrence Review team. If the meeting had been authorised at OCU level within Special Branch, then it was not my place to, question about the meeting. I was asked to attend, and I attended.
You knew the meeting was to be with a deployed UCO?
Yes.
What did you know about that UCO before the meeting?
Nothing.
Did you know the field and focus of his deployment?
No.
How was it, again, justifiable for you to go and spend time to go and see this officer if you didn't know the field and focus of his deployment?
Because of the nexus between Special Branch work and CO24 remit.
But if you don't know what field the officer is in,
Yeah.
how do you know there's a nexus with
Because
CO24 work?
Well, because he's clearly he has to be in the field of public disorder, because that is the only justification for an UC undercover officer to be tasked by a Special Branch. So he had to have been involved in collecting intelligence, gathering intelligence around public disorder.
But public disorder generally is not the remit of CO24, was it?
No, Special Branch. But the specific remit of CO24 was at that point in time was still evolving. You have overlaps between race crime. There were concerns about extreme right-wing activity in that part of London around Plumstead. I know Mr. Grieve was concerned about that. So I think he even referred to that in his evidence yesterday.
But the coverage of the SDS was wider. So, for example, if it was into an environmental group, for example, that would have no relevance to CO24, would it?
It could only be public disorder. So
presumably public disorder which needed to be in some way relevant to the work of CO24 or Stephen Lawrence Review Team.
Yes, and I made the assumption that they wouldn't have asked me to have a meeting with them if it wasn't relevant.
Is it likely they told you where the UCO was deployed to justify your time?
Where he was deployed, forgive me.
The area into which he was deployed, in order to justify your time to come out from Scotland Yard and meet somebody.
It's possible. I don't recall being told the area of London he was deployed to. I wouldn't want to be certain around that. They may have said that, Lambert may have said it's a UC in that part of London. That's possible.
And deployed into the groups related to what?
Well, again, it wasn't made clear to me before the meeting.
Had you received any of the presumably, therefore, you hadn't received any of the officers reporting before the meeting?
Absolutely not.
You didn't receive any sort of bundle of documents briefing you ahead?
No, and I can be certain about that.
As a special branch officer, you presumably would have been entitled to have viewed those. You'd have had sufficient clearance to view an SDS report, would you?
Clearance, obviously, in terms of my vetting status, but access, no, that would have to be approved separately. This is why I can be quite certain around the fact that I didn't see. 'Cause I have no memory whatsoever. I'm certain I didn't see any intelligence from Special Branch during my time, during this period, from May to beyond, May to well beyond.
You've indicated that it was not a unique experience for you to meet a UCO, and you'd done so on occasions before. We will look at some of your taskings when you were detective constable a little bit later in the questionings. But you say, when you're questioned by the IPCC, that it was not unusual for me at the time to see an undercover officer. I mean, I had seen undercover officers during my time in Special Branch as a detective constable on several occasions, so this wasn't, totally unique. But when you said in that interview at the time, that suggests, doesn't it, that they were more contemporary?
Yes, that's not correct. I was referring back to my time on C Squad in 1990. So that's not correct.
Were the Lawrence family or the Stephen Lawrence family campaign mentioned before the meeting with HN81?
No.
Your recollection to Mr. Ellison of the conversation with Mr. Black suggests, I think, that you were told by Mr. Black that they had coverage on the periphery around the Lawrence family. Now, I appreciate there's maybe a slight discrepancy as to when that conversation took place.
Yeah.
But did you know that the UCO was deployed into a group involved with, putting it neutrally, as a group which, if I put it neutrally, focused part of its energy on the Stephen Lawrence inquiry and the Lawrence family's campaign?
So this is an important point to get across the inquiry. I'm certain that I didn't know before, during, or after the meeting with N81 what group he was deployed, tasked to gather intelligence against. And that becomes quite significant when you look at the write-up by Mr. Lambert. I remember, if I could just finish. I remember walking away from the meeting thinking I'm none the wiser on which group he's deployed in.
Had you known the scope of HN81's deployment prior to the meeting, would you still have continued to meet him?
That's a hypothetical question. I can't, which I can't really answer. Because I don't know what his coverage was, and nor what his tasking was, remit, or the intelligence that he was gathering, or against whom.
Well, we will look at some of his reporting in due course, but he was connected to Movement for Justice,
Yes.
and they themselves were supporting the wider Lawrence campaign. I think that's a fair summary. If you had known that, would you have attended the meeting?
If I was told that before the meeting,
Yes.
I'm not sure I can answer that. It's a rather a nuance. I'm very aware of what the tasking of an undercover officer, what is fair and what is not fair, around proportionality. He was, as I understand it, tasked against or to gather intelligence relating to Movement for Justice. Now, if I'd known that beforehand, that is fine, but it's not my responsibility as someone attending a meeting to have any connection around. I'm not responsible for the tasking. I'm not. That's the special branch responsibility.
But you knew that Movement for Justice and the Nation of Islam had been involved with various aspects of disorder surrounding the inquiry. So you were aware of those groups.
Yes.
If you had known that the officer was infiltrating Movement for Justice,
Yes.
that must have given you some. You must have had some knowledge behind which you could have used to form a view as to whether it was appropriate to attend.
Well, as I said, I didn't know what group he was attached to.
No, but we are working on a hypothetical as if you had known he was infiltrating MFJ, would you have gone?
I don't see there's any reason why I wouldn't have done. I didn't know the extent of MFJ's activities. Obviously, I've read, and we've talked about before, we'd seen in the media that some of their protests, etc. So that would not stop me attending the meeting if it was Movement for Justice.
And is that the same answer, regardless whether you were, as a matter of fact, at the time part of the Lawrence Review team or CO24? Is it the same answer for both, or would it be distinct?
It's only relevant in respect of CO24. There's I don't think it's appropriate. It wouldn't have been appropriate if I was on the Lawrence Review team to see an undercover officer deployed anyway. It can only be, in my view, it can only be appropriate in terms of a CO24 remit, and that was in the forefront of my mind. I remember that. I remember that it was my mindset was around the forthcoming challenges that we had with CO24 around disorder, around racism, around race crime, community confidence, etc.
Before deciding to accept covert information, because you do obviously go to meet HN81, before deciding to accept covert information, did you ask yourself whether it was necessary and proportionate to do so?
I think, yes, I think you always do. Whilst it wasn't routine to see an undercover officer, as I said, it wasn't something that I was unfamiliar with. Yes, you have to be aware of the remit, but I was confident that there was plenty. There was a strong emerging nexus around CO24 remit and special branch intelligence gathering around public order remit.
And how could you have made that assessment if you didn't know the group into which the officer has targeted?
Because I'm making the assumption that the undercover officer can only be deployed around public order, public disorder gathering of intelligence.
If you had been told that the intelligence might concern a lawful anti-racist organisation, would that have changed your assessment as to whether it was necessary and proportionate to meet the officer?
the remit can only be proportionate and correct if it's a public order remit and it's around gathering intelligence around public disorder.
When you made the decision that you would attend, what had you hoped to learn from the UCO?
Well, I didn't know whether I was going to brief the officer or he was briefing me when I was told about the meeting.
Did it occur to you that it might be either or both?
Yes.
And if you were to receive that information,
Yeah.
what did you hope to learn?
Well, we were right at the very, very start of the creation of the Racial and Violent Crime Task Force. We wanted to get up and running very, very quickly. We wanted to resolve the issues that the Met was facing. So there was an energy around that. There was a sort of keenness to get started, and obviously understanding the complexity of race crime, public orders, disorder issues, and the overlap with special branch coverage, I thought was appropriate and proportionate. That's why I went to the meeting.
Did you go with the intention to obtain information to help protect the reputation of the Metropolitan Police Service as it drafted the submissions to the Macpherson inquiry?
No, and this had nothing to do with the submissions, as I've said.
But did you hope to obtain information to help protect the reputation of the service through your work in CO24?
It was never about protecting reputations. This is about the remit of CO24 and the sentiment at that time was we were keen to rectify the issues that had been identified in the inquiry. That was an honourable endeavour. We were facing up to the realities that had been exposed in the inquiry, and that was what we were trying to do.
Moving to the 14th of August and the meeting between you and HN81, we understand that the decision was taken to meet HN81 at Bob Lambert's home. Do you know why that location was chosen?
No, and it was never told to me that it was his home. I still can't confirm that. I don't know if the inquiry can, but it was never mentioned to me, so that was his house. I'm still not sure it was, but...
Keeping in mind that HN81 has the benefit of an order restricting his real name, when you met him at D.I. Lambert's home, did you recognise HN81?
No, I didn't.
He's not somebody you'd come across elsewhere in Special
No.
Branch. Please could we show Mr. Lambert's file note? That's MPS 0728625. So that's B35 of the bundle, and it's at page 12 of that document. Thank you very much. This is a file note drafted by Bob Lambert. If we look over leaf, I think we can see it is signed by him, BL 18898. So he's there as the author, and we can see it's submitted to the SDS, so it goes to DCI HN58 and is circulated to the SDS Sergeant. So that's DS Tiddy, Greeny and War. That's TBGNW. You say that this note was never shared with you. Is that right?
Absolutely not, sir. The first time I saw this file note was in 2014 when Mr. Allison presented it to me in an interview, in the middle of the interview. It's the first time I'd seen it. It was never circulated to me. I never had the opportunity to correct it. And it was written 4 days after the meeting, of course, as well. And I also took no notes of the meeting myself.
Why didn't you take notes?
It's a good question. And with hindsight, I wish I had. I didn't know what the meeting was about. It was Lambert's meeting, it was Special Branch's meeting. He took notes. He did the write-up. I didn't take notes. I wish I had.
Was there any operational reason why you wouldn't have taken notes?
I don't think so. No, I could have taken notes. Yeah.
I think when you spoke to the IPCC, you suggested you may not have taken notes as CO24 would not sit within the route of the transfer of intelligence. Do I take it that that was effectively a guess when you were asked by IPCC? You don't actually recall the reason not to take notes?
That is true, of course, because if I'm meeting an undercover officer, I'm aware that the intelligence is going up through the line command of Special Branch, so I'm aware that that's the channel. I'm not sure that's. I'm not sure that's why I didn't take. There's nothing really precluding me from taking notes, informal notes at least.
Now, you didn't take any notes during the meeting. Mm-hmm. Did you write it up after the meeting when you got back to the office, for example?
No, I didn't.
Did you discuss the meeting with anyone within the Stephen Lawrence Review team or CO24?
No, I didn't. I mean, this was a background, as I saw it, a background meeting around public order, looking at the threats that we were going to be looking at in CO24 aligned to Special Branch coverage of the same kind of threats and risks.
If the contents weren't communicated to your superiors or colleagues on CO24 or on the SLRT, depending on the timing, what was the purpose of you attending? How would what you learned help inform either of those units?
Well, remember, I didn't know if the meeting was for me to brief them or for them to brief me when I went.
Yes.
So,
but you obviously knew that after you've been to the meeting. And you
yes,
written it up and circulated.
But anything that was shared with me, I knew was already in the scope of Special Branch, and it would go up the chain. It would inform public order threat assessments and so on and so forth. There was nothing that I took away from the meeting at all. So
it was of no utility?
I don't remember it being memorable at all. I'm afraid. I know there's a lot of attention on this meeting, but we'll come to the write-up in a minute. It was unmemorable for me. It was a pretty routine, pretty ordinary exchange with an undercover officer. Some of the things on this note I agree with, and much of it I don't.
Well, let's have a look at the note now then, shall we? The first paragraph, if we go back a page, please. First paragraph starts, on Friday the 14th of August, I had a meeting with Windmill Tilter, so that's HN81's code name, and Richard Walton. Richard Walton is currently working on the Stephen Lawrence Review team. Was that an accurate description of your posting at that time?
Well, we're talking about the 14th of August, no.
When he gave his evidence to this inquiry, Mr. Lambert was asked how he knew you were working for the review team, and his response was that, well, I'm sure he would have told me. Did you tell him?
I can't remember, sorry. I mean, I would clearly, I would have mentioned the Lawrence Review team, because that's what I've been working on for 2 months, but so I wouldn't have held that back from him.
If we continue with that paragraph, WT talked about the Lawrence inquiry from a movement for justice perspective, and RW from his. Mm-hmm. It was a fascinating and valuable exchange of information concerning an issue which, according to Richard Walton, continues to dominate the Commissioner's agenda on a daily basis. Mm. Was the issue dominating the Commissioner's agenda the Stephen Lawrence inquiry?
Yes, of course. But I'm not sure how I would know that it was actually dominating his agenda on a daily basis. Obviously, as we've discussed earlier, it was very much an issue for the Met and the Commissioner at that time. But
now, Mr. Lambert, in his note, definitely ascribes that information as coming from you.
Yeah. Well, let me be clear. As far as I'm concerned, it was not a fascinating nor a valuable exchange of information.
Yeah, I think that's clear. what information was given to you by HN81? Because it's the discussion of an exchange, isn't it?
Yeah, so if you, would you mind opening up the rest of the file note, please?
I think it might help to zoom in a little bit.
So I need to be very precise around this file note because of the interest in it, and I don't want to mislead the inquiry in any way at all. But the first 3 paragraphs are deeply problematic for me. Can you permit me to go through line by line, or
The first 3 lines?
the 3 paragraphs?
We will go through them.
You will, okay.
But
so-
let me go through. Do you want? Shall we go through them together?
Yeah,
You can
sure.
Tell me if
sure.
we've missed anything
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
So we've looked at the first paragraph.
Yes.
Second paragraph. Richard Walton thanked Windmill Tilter for his invaluable reporting on the subject in recent months. Now, you address this in your statement, paragraph 70A, where you say the comment in the note suggested that I thanked N81 for his invaluable reporting on the subject in recent months was misleading, as I had not seen any reporting from N81, nor did I have any awareness of his role or remit. There was nothing for me to thank him for at that stage, apart from taking on the difficult role of being an undercover officer. We'll look at the nuance of that comment, but as a general proposition, did you thank HN81?
I might have said something to the fact, you're doing a different role, some encouraging words about being an undercover officer. Possibly.
So just thanks, just in a general sense in relation to undertaking a challenging role
Yes.
for Special Branch.
Yes.
And I think we've already covered that you hadn't seen any of his reporting before the meeting
Or after.
or after. Now, Mr. Lambert, in his evidence to the inquiry, said there was no doubt that you had had the benefit of the SDS reporting. Is he right?
So he's profoundly wrong on that point.
And again, D.I. Lambert writes in his note that your thanks were for HN81's reporting on the subject. So again, can we assume the subject is... I think the suggestion here is that the subject would be the Stephen Lawrence inquiry and the campaign surrounding it.
Sorry, which line is this? Which paragraph?
The first line of paragraph 2. Invaluable reporting on the subject. So I'm just trying to establish...
Yeah, it wasn't invaluable.
And in relation to the subject that is being talked about in that sentence, that is presumably intended to be... Do you read that as meaning the Stephen Lawrence inquiry? Or the campaigns surrounding it?
No, I don't know actually. What
You don't understand what what Mr. Lambert means with the subject?
No.
And then on the subject in recent months, so presumably that would have been during your time on the Stephen Lawrence review, even if by this stage you're moving to CO24, because before then...
Which line is this? Sorry.
The same sentence.
Oh, yeah. In recent months, thank you. But it's untrue. I'm sorry. That line is untrue.
So nothing had come to you from the SDS?
No.
Either immediately before this or in the months before?
That's correct. Or after.
Can you assist why Mr. Lambert appears to be under the impression that you had received that information?
I would be speculating. He knew I had come from Special Branch. He may have been, this is speculation, but he may have been thinking that I was some kind of conduit in Special Branch. That's why I've been posted in the Lawrence Review team. That is not correct. And he is fundamentally wrong on this issue. And it's just untrue, that line.
Continuing with the second paragraph, an in-depth discussion enabled him to increase his understanding of the Lawrence's relationship with the various campaigning groups like MFJ. This, he said, would be of great value as he continued to prepare a draft submission to the inquiry on behalf of the Commissioner. MFJ's future plans were also discussed at some length. So we've got Mr. Lambert recording a discussion surrounding campaigning groups, which we've already touched upon.
Yeah.
But presumably the discussion would have been around the groups which the MPS were concerned might hijack the campaign. Do you
No,
recall
well, none of this is
that?
true. So all of that, none of that paragraph is truth.
So there was no discussion around those groups.
I remember some discussion around Nation of Islam, Movement for Justice. That's the limit of it.
And the group's relationship with the Lawrence family.
No, I don't remember that at all. Great value, not true, as we've said. And of course, whilst I might have mentioned the submissions, and this is really important, sir, that because this is a key finding of the Ellison review, where he said that not only was N81 a spy in the Lawrence family account, but he also said that the meeting was convened in order that to assist the submissions to the inquiry. And I'm presuming that Mr. Ellison has got that finding from this paragraph, because I've seen no other evidence in relation that would substantiate that finding.
And you take exception to the suggestion within
absolutely,
and
I
the
do.
detail within
yes,
that paragraph.
because for the reasons we discussed this morning, sir, that I had finished my work on the draft submissions. It would never have been appropriate at all for that. It was not appropriate. I would have known that at the time. I did know that. And it's, again, on behalf of the Commissioner, it's clear embellishment. It's untrue.
But drafting the submissions to the inquiry was your job, or had been.
Had been, yes.
Yep. And that would have been part of your job at the review team, but not at CA24.
Correct, yes. And can I just make one further point about this, please? The final line, Movement for Justice future plans were also discussed at some length, is fundamentally untrue. Because I know I came out of that meeting not knowing that the undercover officer was actually deployed in Movement for Justice. So whilst there was a comment about Nation of Islam and Movement for Justice, MFJ's future plans were definitely not discussed. At least, and definitely not at any length, let alone some length.
But, okay, so you weren't aware that he was deployed into that group specifically, but you do recall getting intelligence about MFJ?
No, I didn't receive any intelligence about MFJ. There was discussion about MFJ and Nation of Islam, their sort of activities in and around the inquiry, as in 29th and 30th of June.
I'm just going back to your answer a minute ago. You say... I'm sorry to move away from the microphone. Thank you. I came out of that meeting not knowing that the undercover officer was actually deployed in Movement for Justice. So whilst there was comment about Nation of Islam and Movement for Justice, Movement for Justice future plans were definitely not discussed. And then you've just said that Movement for Justice wasn't discussed. Am I getting the wrong end of the stick here?
No, forgive me. I'm trying to be clear, but there was mention in the meeting about Nation of Islam Movement for Justice, but not in respect of any future plans, because that would because I wouldn't. He wouldn't be. He didn't tell me what organisation he was in.
So they were discussed as a topic.
Yes.
Didn't understand him to be in those groups, and there was no discussion of future plans.
Correct. Yes.
I take it that again the comment that the information was of great value to you. You disagree with?
Embellishment.
You say embellishment, but I just want to look at that. Embellishment suggests there's a grain of accuracy which is then being taken out of proportion, doesn't it? So do you think this is broadly correct, but this is Bob, and this is a phrase we've heard quite a lot in relation to SDS bigging himself up?
Yes.
Or is it this is a fiction?
There's a combination of both in these three paragraphs, and I'm really trying to be careful about what I say in regards to what is untruth in my view, and what is embellishment. I do accept your point. The trouble with embellishment is that there's sometimes a strand that might have been mentioned, and I wouldn't want to deny that it came up, a bit like the discussion around Nation of Islam, Movement for Justice. So where I think it's untrue, I'm going to say it's untrue. If it's embellishment, then yes, there might have been a strand.
So I think we've established that you did receive information about the Nation of Islam and the MFJ. Do you recognise that there's something of a contradiction in accepting covert evidence about anti-racist campaigns while helping the NPS answer allegations of institutional racism?
No, because we were trying to address those issues. So, we CO24, as I said, we're very energised, very open-minded, and it was all about an anti-racist police service we were trying to create.
Was receiving information which was from targeting black people who were alleging institutional racism itself a form of discrimination?
Well, I don't sort of recognise that, no.
We looked earlier at the Stephen Lawrence Review Team meeting with Council on the 3rd of August 1998, which addressed issues relating to the pitch and tone of the submissions.
Yes.
Was the meeting with HN81 intended to help the NPS understand the Lawrence family's position and campaigns surrounding the inquiry to help with the pitch and tone of submissions?
No, it had nothing to do with the Lawrence Review Team work or the submissions.
I'm going to move to the third paragraph, but I said I'd give you an opportunity to comment on anything in that second paragraph.
No, I think we've covered the second one off.
I'm grateful.
Third one.
Third paragraph. Richard Walton explained a lot of the behind-the-scenes politics involving the Home Office. It emerged that there is a great sensitivity around the Lawrence issue, with both the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister extremely concerned that the Metropolitan Police could end up with its credibility in the eyes of London's black community completely undermined. What knowledge did you have at the time of the behind-the-scenes politics involving the Home Office?
And none that I can recall. I mean, I was a sergeant, and none that I can recall. Obviously, like everybody else, I was reading the newspapers, and that's the extent of it.
Do you recall speaking to HN81 about the concerns of the Home Secretary and Prime Minister?
No, I don't.
Whether that was based on supposition or public knowledge?
I don't remember. I don't want to be categorical around that. It could have come up, but I don't remember it coming up.
I think there's been a suggestion in one of HN81's accounts, I don't have my fingers on it at the moment, that he came away with the impression that you may have worked for the Home Office.
Yes, I saw that, and I was sort of flabbergasted.
Does that perhaps suggest that you may have mentioned the Home Office whilst you were when you met 81?
I really couldn't say. I was astonished that he said that, because I cannot see why Lambert would have not have told his undercover officer that he was meeting with me and where I was from and what I was doing. So I really can't understand that at all.
I'm going to move to the indented paragraphs below, but again, is there
Yeah.
anything on paragraph 3 that you feel we haven't covered?
No. That's fine, sir, thank you.
So if we now move to numbered paragraph, heading 1, please. How to respond to the charge of institutionalised racism. The term institutionalised racism, as opposed to institutional racism, would you have used the term institutionalised racism?
No, I would have used the term institutional racism.
This paragraph seems to be a reference to the suggestion made during the inquiry that the MPS was institutionally racist. Paragraph reads, "Here the team seems likely to admit the essence of the charge. What is exercising their minds is merely the terminology to use. There is a preference for phrases like unconscious racism and a lack of understanding of black culture. The team realises that, however expressed, such a frank admission of failure will shock many serving police officers who have, thus far, been fed a much more upbeat response to the inquiry in the job." So Mr. Lambert's note describes the team's preferences for phrases or terminology to be used. Do you accept that that suggests the draft has not yet crystallised into the final version yet?
No, I don't think so. Although this is the 14th of August, so obviously the submission hadn't been submitted yet. And this is clearly the position at the time, so this has come from me.
And the day before there had been discussions, had there not, about the contents of those submissions with council?
Yes.
At which you were present?
Yes.
So the knowledge about what terminology to use, the wording of the submission, would presumably at this meeting have been fresh in your mind?
Yes.
Is this what is recorded? Is this because, have you passed that on to HN81 in this meeting and that's why it's in this note?
Well, no, not specifically. I mean, this has come from me. This is me, if you like, briefing the undercover officer on the issues around unconscious racism, the concerns around around culture, and also the concerns around institutional racism. That's not direct related to the submissions in any way. That's just the position we were working on at the time. So I'm just passing on really those issues.
If we look at your witness statement, please, at paragraph 77.
Yeah.
Maybe worth pulling it up. UCPI 37511, page 33, please. Thank you very much. There is also reference in Bob Lambert's file note to three main areas that my team is considering. The file note suggests that the three areas I discussed included the MPS's response to the charge of institutional racism. While I do not have my own minutes of the meeting to directly compare against Bob Lambert's notes, the reference to the charge of institutional racism was as relevant to the remit of CO24 as it was to the work of the SLRT.
Yes.
However, I accept the reference to the team in the first point is likely to be to the SLRT. And it appears from the note that I talked about the work of the SLRT and their concerns. So you acknowledge that the reference to the team in Mr. Lambert's file note is likely to mean Stephen Lawrence review team.
Because we're talking about institutional racism, yes.
So does it follow that you also must accept that your attendance at the meeting was as a representative of that team?
No.
Even in part?
No.
Who gave you permission to discuss the workings of the Stephen Lawrence review team with HN81 and D.I. Lambert?
Well, the meeting was approved at OCU commander level.
That's not the question I'm asking. Who gave you permission to discuss the workings of the SLRT with them? That not necessarily, it's not quite the same thing, is it?
Well, I'd moved on to CO24, but yes, I was drawing on my experience from the Lawrence Review team. I'm not in any way denying that.
Mr. Quick's evidence yesterday was that the work of the SLRT was confidential. He had not given you permission to share the detail with other parts of the MPS, and that you had no business in having those conversations.
Well, he was speaking, I think, in answer to, a hypothetical question, which was presenting me as a member of the Lawrence Review team at the time. Obviously, I'd moved on to CO24 at the time of this meeting.
But you still knew the confidential information from the Stephen Lawrence Review team, and you had attended a meeting as effectively part of the Stephen Lawrence Review team the day before.
I don't think it's confidential information. It was widely talked about, including in the broadsheets and the press.
But the particular machinations of the review team in deciding how to phrase things and what was exercising it, that must be confidential, surely.
I'm not sure it would be confidential, to be honest. These matters were being discussed widely across the Met. It was nothing that was particularly sensitive.
So you wouldn't accept the suggestion that you were sharing this information improperly and without the permission of your commanding officer?
No, I wouldn't accept that.
When you say the reference to the charge of institutional racism was as relevant to the remit of CO24 as it was to the work of SLRT, do you accept that this particular paragraph that we're looking at is in relation to your work on the Stephen Lawrence Review team and not in relation to CO24's work?
It's both.
Both. So, for example, when we say the phrase, the team realises that, however expressed, such a frank admission of failure will shock many serving police officers, that clearly wasn't the concern of CO24, was it? That is a reference to Stephen Lawrence Review team.
Actually, it could be either, and it could be either. I'm not actually sure which team I was referring to, but it could actually be either. But this first paragraph under point 1 obviously resonates more with my work in Lawrence Review team than it does on CO24.
Please can we return to Mr. Lambert's file note? Thank you, that's MPS 728625. Thank you very much. And page 12, please, lower half. I'm going to move on to paragraphs 2 and 3. Did you have any comment on paragraph 1 that you wanted
No,
to
thank
raise?
you, no.
Thank you. So paragraph 2, how to handle the second stage of the public inquiry. Richard Walton explained that the Commissioner plans to stage a series of public forums in the months ahead, at which he will attend personally and set out the Met's position. One proposed venue was Lambeth Town Hall, and Windmill Tilter was able to advise Richard Walton of the vulnerability that such a meeting would have to disruption from MFJ and local black youth. As regards the second stage itself, there continue to be daily discussions within Richard Walton's office as to the best tactics to adopt. The question of the Commissioner's resignation and that of his assistant Ian Johnson is regularly addressed. And then 3, how to regain the confidence of the black community. Commander Grieve is now in charge of post-Lawrence black community relations and is clearly hoping to be able to draw a line under the affair and work towards to a more positive relationship. Windmill Tilter was able to highlight the enormity of this task as regards sections of the black community in and around Brixton. He was also able to provide Richard Walton with some specific and positive information as regards those community groups who might be prepared to build bridges. When you spoke to Mr. Ellison about these paragraphs, you said, yes, I remember talking to them about this. So these points 1, 2 and 3, how to respond to institutional racism and how the second stage of the public inquiry and how to regain the confidence of the black community, that is all correct. That would have come from me because, of course, as I said, the thrust of my Lawrence Review team role was absolutely those things. Now, in paragraph 77 of your witness statement, you now say the second and third of the main areas were clearly to do with the work of CO24. Why do you say that those areas were clearly to do with the work of CO24?
Actually, throughout my interview with Mr. Ellison, I stressed to him that he needed to check whether I was in the Lawrence Review team or CO24 at different stages. It goes back to the chronology of the the meetings and what I was doing at the time. I don't think there's any difference. It was, a long interview with Mr. Ellison, and I caveated accordingly everything I said.
Do you accept that your accounts seem contradictory on that point? It seems you're fairly emphatic when you speak to Mr. Ellison in the excerpt I've just read out.
I don't think it's contradictory. I think you'd have to, rather than taking an extract of the interview, I think you'd have to read around it, the other questions around this, because it was a long interview. It's obviously public record, everything I said in that interview, but I don't think there's contradictions, actually. And interestingly, Mr. Ellison did make, he was very critical of me for having a different view, or slightly different view. My second interview, my first, I would respectfully say that he presented me this file note, in the first meeting without me having any opportunity to see it beforehand. And so I, dutifully answered questions in relation to it. Quite rightly went away and reflected upon it and realised there were major errors in this file note. So I think the criticism was unfair. And actually, interestingly, the IPCC did a 2-year investigation in alleged differences between my accounts, and actually found that there were none. So, and they looked at all the lengthy the 2 interviews I gave with Mr. Ellison.
And understood. That's helpful context to your explanation to Mr. Ellison. We're not trying to reopen any of either Ellison or the IPCC. What we're looking at is the evidence which may have been provided at that earlier stage because it's fresher. But obviously, when the bits that we just looked at in Mr. Ellison, in the interview with Mr. Ellison, it does seem that you're fairly emphatic, and I think your evidence is that you were ambushed to an extent with that document. But would it not have been clear on the face of it what would have, if it was CO24 work, that it would have been? Would you not have easily identified which hat you were wearing?
It's interesting you use the word ambush, because that's exactly what it felt like, to be perfectly blunt. I know Mr. Ellison had a challenging role with tight time frames, but I don't believe the due process was followed. I think because of that, if you present a 2-page file note to a witness 16 years after the event and expect authoritative responses to detailed questions, many of which were put to me as hypotheticals, then I think it's entirely reasonable for me to give my best account at the first meeting, and then to go away and reflect upon this file note, to try and check some of this stuff which I have done over the years. And obviously now I'm much clearer. Even looking at it again this week, I'm much more clear than I was even 12 years ago.
In relation to the point in Section 2, the first paragraph of Section 2, relating to the Commissioner's intent to attend Lambeth Town Hall, the Stephen Lawrence review team didn't have a specific public order remit, did it?
No.
CO24 didn't have a
yes, it did. It had there was an overlap. It was emerging. Of course, this is the 14th of August. We didn't know precisely what the remit of CO24 was going to be at that stage, but we knew there was an overlap between public order, public disorder, and race crime, because obviously that's with Stephen's murder. That's what there was there. It was a terrible race crime.
There doesn't appear to be any suggestion in this note. In these paragraphs, the note that there would be violent disorder.
No, it doesn't. That's true.
But is it your evidence that CO24 would have been concerned with more, if I say, run-of-the-mill public disorder? Or were you dealing with more serious matters?
We didn't know at the time, CO24. Our focus was around race crime. Yet this is obviously more around special branch responsibility, preparing threat assessments for public order branch to be able to police them well. None of these 2 paragraphs particularly jars with me, but I can't be 100%. about these, the discussion around Lambda Town Hall, etc., etc. And of course, that information, if it's being passed to me, I'm not going to do anything with it because it's
That's
not my
next
remit.
question.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of you being told? Did
Well,
anything happen with that particular?
No, that's why I didn't
information?
go away and do anything with it, because that information goes up the chain of command within a special branch to inform public order policing.
Looking at paragraphs 2 and 3 again, paragraph 2 with the suggestion there may be some disorder outside a meeting at a town hall,
Yeah.
and the intention to regain the confidence of the black community. Do you consider that those matters were sufficient to justify the use of a UCO to spy on community groups for the purpose of assisting the MPS manage community relations?
That's well out of my remit. That's not my remit to do.
Did you have a view? You said earlier you were able to assess proportionality and necessity.
I'd need more than that before thinking it was justified.
You suggest in your witness statement at paragraph 77 that you don't think D.I. Lambert would have had a full understanding of the ins and outs of either the Stephen Lawrence Review Team or CO24. And you say, or of my role at the time with either of them. And it's possible that he conflated different aspects when writing down this file note a few days after the meeting. What do you think that D.I. Lambert would not have understood the distinctions between the two teams? So why do you think D.I. Lambert wouldn't have understood the distinction between the two teams?
Well, I'm clearly speculating there, but he described me in his evidence as the Commissioner's staff officer or chief of staff. Clearly, I wasn't. He's completely misunderstood my role in the Lawrence Review Team. So it's very clear that he had no idea what my role was. He would certainly have no clue around the remit of the CO24, because it was at 14th of August. It was, at best 2 weeks old.
Did you tell him you had moved or were moving to CO24 from the Stephen Lawrence Review Team?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry. It's not mentioned, obviously, but I don't know the answer to that.
Can we take it that the fact that it isn't mentioned is indicative that you didn't tell him?
Absolutely not, no, because I don't think anything on this file note can be taken as a gospel.
So I don't know if that's a good moment to rise for an afternoon break.
Can I understand what you're saying about paragraphs 1, 2 and 3? Do you accept that this accurately represents what you said at the meeting?
So can I ask you, do you mean the numbered one?
The numbered paragraphs. I'm just asking about the numbered paragraphs.
Those are my best assessment of those 3 paragraphs is, in generality, those are areas that I would have conveyed to him. I can't account for how the words are written and for some of the detail in there. But that's not, this 1, 2 and 3 certainly not come from, well, bits of it have, but this is my area, this is the CO24 remit. We haven't come on yet to the last paragraph. I don't know, so if you're going to cover that one or on the next page. Sorry.
We'll do that after the break.
Okay.
What I want to try and understand is whether what is set out here in paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 either accurately or more or less accurately represents something that you said at this meeting.
So I'd say more or less accurately, so yes.
Thank you. Right. How long would you like? 10 minutes. 10 minutes then.
If we could bring back the file note from Mr. Lambert, please. That is MPS 0728625. Fantastic, thank you. And the next page, please. So this next page we have at the top box, Richard Walton also explained how the Home Office was very sensitive about wider implications of the Lawrence case, in particular the potential for rioting or disorder by sections of the black community in the wake of an irretrievable loss of confidence in the police. Allied to this was a concern about the damaging effects of sustained political pressure from hard left and anti-police elements. First of all, again, we're seeing a reference to the Home Office. Do you recall speaking about this aspect of Home Office concerns?
Absolutely not.
Looking at the final sentence, allied to this was the concern about the damaging effects of sustained political pressure from hard left and anti-police elements. Was that a concern that you had either in SLRT or in CO24 for
No, it wasn't.
political pressure from the left?
No, it was not.
I propose moving on from this document now. Was there a further point you wanted to make on that paragraph?
No, I think you've covered it. Thank you.
I'm grateful. In your witness statement, and you've already spoken about it a little bit now, and in response to the chair's questioning, you talk about embellishment. And at paragraph 28C of your witness statement, it's page 12. Oh, apologies. It's H. Specifically in relation to the 14th of August 1998 meeting with N81, I was never shown by Mr. Ellison the file note of 18th of August, drafted by Mr. Bob Lambert, that set out his recollection of the meeting ahead of my first interview with Mr. Ellison. And just for absolute clarity, your complaint is you hadn't been given it before you were interviewed by Mr. Ellison for the first time. And the first time you see it is in that interview with Mr. Ellison.
That is my recollection, yes.
When you were first shown this document, your comment is that you don't dispute anything in the file note.
Yes.
So it's fair to say that your initial impression was that this was an accurate document relating to a meeting you attend connected with your work on the Stephen Lawrence Review team. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Again, of your initial impression. I appreciate you have a slightly more nuanced take now.
Yes.
In terms of detail of recollection, could we look, please, at what you specifically recall about that meeting? Can we bring up HN81's witness statement in Operation Hearn? That's U36915. And page 3 of that document, please. Now, about halfway through that first paragraph, if you could zoom, thank you. At the very top of it, where the line starting my perception. My perception, my very faint memory of events, is that I was asked to give my view on what the police could do to improve its relationship with the black community. The only specific part that I have a recollection of talking about is the black churches, because the group I had infiltrated was making great efforts to try to infiltrate black church groups in order to try to get them to use their influence on the community to advocate non-cooperation with the police. As far as my group was concerned, non-cooperation was achievable, but was only a stage towards anti-police action and ultimately public disorder and violence. I didn't seriously believe that my group was going to achieve its ambition of getting church members rioting towards revolution, but given that my group were trying, it seemed pertinent to suggest the police/Home Office should try to counter it. You are asked about this by Mr. Ellison. If we could bring up your Ellison transcript. MPS 0723183 and page 31 of that document, please. Line 5. Oh, sorry. If we could also, so this you're asked about this document, and then you say yes. So I was called to Bob Lambert's house to meet an individual I was told was an official from the Home Office. You're reading the underlying document.
Yes.
I've commented on that. This was the direction of Bob Lambert, again commenting on official, directing me to generic questions about the campaign. That is fine. Black community and black churches. I'm not sure about black churches ever featuring at all.
Yes.
Mr. Ellison, was the black community generally of interest, though? Well, we would not have referred to it as the black community. What we were concerned about was the movement for justice and the Nation for Islam. Again, I don't think there is any... We weren't looking at the black community. We were only looking at the black community in terms of confidence, community confidence. Again, reading to the quotation, the official asked me generic questions about the campaigns of, and then you coming back to your comment on it, I would not have asked about the black community or the black churches. Now that seems to be a little bit more specific recall of the interaction you have with Mr. Ellison off the back of a description of that meeting, albeit not Mr. Lambert's note. Would you accept that seems to be quite specific recall?
Well, I can't. I'm not sure it's specific recall, and I can't remember either way, to be honest, today or then, whether we talked about black community or black churches. So we might have done. I can't recall. I've said that I would not have asked, but I'm not sure I could be categorical around that.
So you're suggesting that when you speak to Mr. Ellison about it, you're effectively hypothesising in that interview?
Yes.
You're not asserting, based on a positive recall,
Yes.
that you did not ask about that?
Yes.
If we could go back to your statement, please, paragraph 74A, so UCPI 37511, page 29, please, paragraph 74A. And again, you say you consider the note to be an embellished version of the events to the extent you remember them.
Yes.
We've already covered the point that you make about thanking HN81, but in relation to the suggestion that the discussions enabled you to increase your understanding of the Lawrence's relationship with the various campaigning groups, or suggestion that it would be of value as you drafted your submission, you say that is incorrect. So is that incorrect or is that embellishment?
That is incorrect.
How long did your meeting with HN81 last?
I can't be sure, sir. I don't want to mislead, but my best recollection is an hour.
An hour. Do you recall who spoke for most of the meeting?
No, I don't, actually.
If one looks at that note created by Bob Lambert,
Yeah.
the majority of the information included in that note appears to come from you, correct? Or is at least reported as coming from you?
Yes, but yeah, I'm not sure majority, but yes, some of it clearly has.
Now, Mr. Lambert, when he was asked by the IPCC about that, explained that that was because his colleagues, to whom the note is circulated, in essence, knew 81 side of the story. Do you recall any matters which were discussed and which are not recorded in this note?
No.
Given that Mr. Lambert appears to focus on your contribution to the meeting in order to disseminate it to his team, and in fact recalls very little information from HN81, Can you suggest why he wouldn't have made a faithful record of your contribution if it was to be circulated to his managers and his sergeants?
Well, I think obviously those points 1, 2, and 3 are. I'm not sure it's how I would have written it up, but it's, as we said, so it's, that's clearly my contribution. It's the first 3 paragraphs and the last paragraph which is his contribution, and that's where we enter the realms of a combination of untruth, embellishment, or overstatement, which I hope I've made clear.
After the meeting, did you discuss it with Mr. Quick?
No,
Did you discuss it with Mr. Grieve?
I don't think so.
When you spoke to the IPCC,
No.
You suggested that the only person you may have spoken to about it was Mr. Grieve.
Yeah,
Can you now recall ever actually doing so?
I can't recall, sir. No.
Yesterday, Mr. Grieve told the inquiry he had absolutely no knowledge of this meeting and he was never briefed on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
Would that accord with what you would expect?
Well, he was Deputy Assistant Commissioner. I was an ADI, so.
If he didn't get the information from you, from whom would he have got it?
Well, obviously, we could come to it, but Colin Black established a correspondence route between Special Branch and CO24.
But why would that have been necessary if you were in CO24? You have the information.
Because
If it was necessary for Mr. Grieve to know, surely you would have spoken to him.
no, I think the information, the correct channel is still up through Special Branch, and then back into the right part of CO24, which is why why it was not my place to pass on information from the meeting.
Well, why couldn't that have been done by a briefing note? Then why was a meeting necessary?
Well, that's a matter for those who approved the meeting and authorised the meeting.
In his witness statement, Mr. Grieve says that from a review of the material in his pack, it seems that Richard Walton had one meeting with an SDS officer in August 1998. At this stage, he was part of Lawrence's review team. I was not aware of this meeting at the time, and he did not tell me of it. I did not have any direct or indirect knowledge that Richard Walton had received a briefing.
Yeah.
That reference there is MPS 0749658, paragraph 32 on page 19.
Yeah.
Do we take it, notwithstanding what you said about proper channels, do we take it that you came away from this meeting thinking it was not of utility to CO24?
I can't remember it being of particular utility to anything that I was doing, to CO24. No, not at that point in time. I can't remember it being of any utility.
Because it is difficult to understand how, if it was useful, you wouldn't have mentioned it directly to the head of your unit.
Well, yes, except there's a lot of ranks between me and him, but
there's not a lot of people in the office at that time.
True.
You said it was just you and
That's
Sergeant
true.
McDowell.
That's true. There was no utility from that meeting, to be blunt.
In his evidence to the inquiry yesterday, Mr. Grieve said that he was not interested in any intelligence relevant to the MPS to MPF's reputation as opposed to disorder or investigating crime. He was also clear in his evidence that he didn't need any covert sources telling him who was supporting the Lawrences, and that if he wanted to know what Dr. Lawrence thought, he would have gone and asked him.
Yeah.
He described the need to approach a secret source as totally unnecessary. Again, what relevance would your meeting with 81 have had to Mr. Grieve and his team? He struggles to see the utility of it, even in theory.
Well, it was approved by Special Branch, so not by Mr. Grieve. And Mr. Grieve was obviously he couldn't remember me, which I think his timescales are also off, but we've covered.
I think we've covered some.
Yeah.
Of that.
So it depends on how the question's been put to him in terms of appropriateness. He's commenting, I think, saying he wasn't known, but of course he was. He did also say, I think, in his evidence that he was concerned about extreme right-wing elements going forward in terms of coverage around that part of London and the need for CO24 to have understanding of that. As I understand it, he did have a conversation with Colin Black around setting up the conduit so that relevant material from Special Branch that was relevant to CO24's remit could be passed to CO24. I wasn't aware of that correspondence route then. It didn't become in my remit. But I don't think it was illegitimate for there to be a route from Special Branch into CO24 because, as I said earlier on, I think there was a clear nexus between the remits of those two departments and legitimate for Special Branch's reporting on public disorder to reach CO24 if there was an overlap.
But this specific intelligence wouldn't have been of use to CO24, would it? I think we're probably agreed on that now.
Just the word intelligence is strong. I don't think that it was intelligence. As I said, it was a background meeting, as far as I was concerned, around the issues around public order in that part of London.
And again, I must ask, was the reason it didn't make it to Mr. Grieve because, in fact, it was sought with the intention of putting it towards your work on the Stephen Lawrence review team?
That is not correct. No.
As you said, one officer who was aware of the meeting was Colin Black. If we could show, please, MPS 0720946. So that's B13 in the bundle. And when we have it, page 3, please. Sorry, I may have given you the wrong number there. 0720946. Apologies. Thank you. And page 3, please. Now, this document is an SDS intelligence update and its associated minute sheets. The minute sheets start at page 2, but I want you to look, please, at this minute here.
Mm-hmm.
And it is from Colin Black, dated 14th of September 98, to Detective Superintendent S. These papers confirm that the SDS is, as usual, well positioned at the focal crisis points of policing in London. I am aware that DI Richard Walton of CO24 receives ad hoc off-the-record briefings. I have reiterated to him that it is essential that knowledge of the operation goes no further. I would not want for him to receive anything on paper. And then he says, I have established a correspondence route to DAC Grieve via DS McDowell, formerly of SO12, and opened an SP file for copy correspondence with CO24. It will, of course, fall to C Squad to provide the bulk of that material. They will undoubtedly consult SDS as appropriate. Is the focal crisis point of London referred to matters surrounding the Stephen Lawrence inquiry?
I think it must be.
Looking at the sentence about the briefing, it says, I'm aware DI Walton of CO2 receives, present tense, ad hoc off-the-record briefings, plural. I understand you say that's not correct. Why is that?
I think he's referring to the one briefing I'd had, the one and only briefing. I only had one brief. It was only one briefing with N81.
Yeah, so only one briefing with 81 and no other briefings from the SDS during your time on the
Correct.
Lawrence Review Team or CO24.
Correct.
Are you able to assist us, and appreciate it is difficult, but why Mr. Black suggested briefings in the plural if you had only had one briefing?
I think that's just a phrase, the way he's written the briefing, though. I don't think he's trying to be misleading or anything. I think he's, it was one briefing. He may have, because he's referring, this is the 14th of September, the meeting I had with N81 was 14th of August, it's a month later.
A month later.
Perhaps he's speculating I've had more than one briefing.
Colin Black states that he reiterated to you that it's essential that knowledge of the operation goes no further.
Yeah.
Now, reiterate suggests that it was something that he spoke to you more than once about, doesn't it?
Yes,
An
it
ordinary
does.
construction of the language.
Yes, it does. And I think, as I alluded to earlier on, I can't be certain that this isn't the second meeting with Colin Black, but I'm really not sure. We didn't have one before the 14th of August, a conversation then. I just can't be sure with these two. But yes, you're right, he does imply that.
Do you accept that it looks, or it is written in a way which suggests that Mr. Black is at pains to suppress the fact of the meeting?
No, I think he's obviously talking it's operational security in terms of the knowledge of the SDS operation, so that's what he's concerned about there.
So were you aware at the time that it would be treated with sensitivity?
Yes, of course, yeah. I mean, just to extrapolate a bit, I mean, obviously the whole SDS operation was classified secret, so it needed the appropriate security around it.
If Mr. Black suggested he didn't want you to receive anything on paper, was that something you were aware of, that you weren't to receive anything on paper?
I don't remember that, but obviously he's setting up the correspondence route, and as I said, I wasn't in that chain at all, and it wouldn't have been appropriate for it to be in that chain. It has to come up from the SDS into their line management special branch and then be disseminated into the Met, sometimes into public order, and on this occasion into CO24.
Did it concern you that you weren't part of the ordinary intelligence chain? That you seem to be being your meeting with HN81 seems to be being excluded from that?
Well, it's not, because the file note went up and then informed a special branch assessment, which I'm sure you've seen. So that file note was part of SB special branch coverage, and it did go up the chain of command and did inform subsequently an assessment.
The fact that there may have been an indication for you not to receive anything on paper, did that ever cause you to query the appropriateness of the meeting?
No, because this is post-meeting.
It is, but it's talking about security measures in relation to the meeting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what happens afterwards.
Sure. But I haven't seen this briefing note, obviously. I was not party to the briefing note.
No, I accept that.
I've only seen
But it suggests that you were told that the knowledge of the operation goes no further.
Yes, and I've no reason to doubt that he did say that.
Of HN81's operation or of SDS operation?
I think I don't know. Could be either or both.
So 5 lines from the bottom of the minute, Mr. Black writes about the establishment of a correspondence route to Mr. Grieve via DS McDowell. And he, as you said, was a colleague of yours in in CO24, and his role, as I understand it, was to run the intelligence unit.
Yes.
You, in the end, didn't end up having a role in that cell. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah. So, I mean, just to be really clear with you, I didn't receive any intelligence from Special Branch throughout my entire time in the Lawrence Review team, throughout my entire time on CO24 and beyond. It wasn't my role.
Yeah. When was it envisaged that a particular path? Do you know when it was envisaged that a particular path of intelligence was going to be established?
No, I didn't know, and as I said to Mr. Ellison, I wasn't aware that this route had been set up. I've seen some material from the file, CO24 file, which I'm pretty sure confirms that I was not a part of it. I was never minuted up to receive any of it. I think Barry McDowell and DAC Grieve were minuted to see material, but I never saw any, and I didn't know about the correspondence route. Very quickly after I started in CO24, within a matter of weeks, I was tasked with the Operation Spectrum remit, which, that became my focus.
And did that take you away from receipt of intelligence?
Yes, I received no intelligence. Yeah.
I think if we could scroll down to the minute of the 26th of September, which I may... I don't have the reference. I may come back to that. Let's leave that. Please, can we turn to page 8 of this document, please? This is Mr. Lambert's September 1998 SDS intelligence update itself. If we look down to that third paragraph under extremist involvement in the Stephen Lawrence campaign section, we see it says, in addition to providing valuable public order intelligence for C Squad, Windmill Tilt's unique insight into the behind-the-scenes machinations of the Lawrence campaign has also proved invaluable to ADI Richard Walton, who's currently attached to the Stephen Lawrence Review team. At a recent SDS meeting, Windmill Tilter was able to give ADI Walton a first-hand briefing on the case and offered some sound advice, e.g. that the Commissioner would be ill-advised to attend a public forum at Lambeth Town Hall, as provisionally planned, in terms of the Metropolitan Police's long-term strategy of seeking to rebuild damaged relations with the black community. Windmill Tilter was able to comment authoritatively on the enormity of the task generally and in his own local area, Brixton specifically. So Mr. Lambert's note refers to HN81's unique insight into the behind-the-scenes machinations of the Lawrence campaign, proving invaluable to you. Do you recall his intelligence providing such information when you spoke?
No, and I'm assuming, I think correctly, that this is all informed by the file note.
So I take it that the information that you did receive was not invaluable to the work that you were doing?
Absolutely not invaluable.
Whether that was SLRT or CO24?
Correct, yeah.
Did you provide that glowing feedback that Mr. Lambert ascribes to you?
No.
And again, I asked you a similar question in relation to the underlying note, but in relation to this one, can you suggest why Mr. Lambert would include this information in his briefing if it was not true?
I can only surmise that SDS was trying to impress their senior management in their intelligence gathering.
I'm grateful to Ms. McGonigal. I now have the reference I wish to go to. Could we show, please, MPS 0722486? On page 4, please. the top is a minute again to Detective Superintendent C from Colin Black, 26th of, I think, September 98. If at all possible, I would wish to see a flow of suitable material to DS McDowell, both tactical intelligence around the Lawrence inquiry and broader work on race crime. Please carry forward. So Colin Black, by setting this up, refers specifically to tactical intelligence surrounding the Lawrence inquiry, and asking for a flow of suitable material. I think that suggests, doesn't it, that Colin Black thought it would be of utility to CO24 to have that intelligence surrounding the Lawrence inquiry. Would you agree from a reading of that document?
Yes, I think so.
And as a member of CO24 at that time, would it in fact have been useful to you?
It depends what the material was, of course. We're talking about...
So broader work on race crime, I think we can both agree that would have been useful to CO24. Specifically, tactical intelligence around the Lawrence inquiry, would that have been useful?
Only in respect of race crime. It's very difficult with his phraseology for me to comment on his minute, to be honest. I don't want to be unfair.
I appreciate that, but just in terms of the content of the suggested flow of intelligence, the direction to send your unit intelligence on the Lawrence inquiry, I think that it's fair that you can comment on that one way or another.
Yes, and in relation to the issues and the crossover and the nexus that we've discussed. Yeah.
Looking now to dissemination and use of the information. You've already explained helpfully that you didn't speak to Mr. Grieve or Mr. Quick about that meeting. I'd like to ask, in general, in terms, was anything you learned from HN81 or D.I. Lambert communicated formally or informally, either written or orally, to your colleagues on the SLRT?
No.
Your colleagues on CO24?
I don't think so.
What makes you pause there?
There may have been something that informed our thinking around race crime from what I heard, but I can't remember anything.
Sarah Thornton.
Yes.
Would you have communicated formally?
No. I had no connection with Sarah Thornton. I think I only met her a couple of times.
MPS lawyers?
No.
Counsel?
No.
The Commissioner?
No.
Or any public order or intelligence desk?
No. Again, that was not my role.
So effectively, anything that was learnt stopped with you?
Yes, if I learnt anything at all, yes.
You've suggested that the knowledge of the meeting didn't influence your work on the Stephen Lawrence Review team, and I appreciate that part of your answer may be that you had moved to a degree, or entirely away from that work, and it's a matter for the chair to unpick that. What contemporaneous safeguard prevented covert intelligence about those challenging the MPS from informing its legal, reputational, or operational response to the Lawrence inquiry? What was there to stop it bleeding back into parts of the organisation that ought not to have that information?
Well, I'd moved on from the submissions. It comes back to our conversation earlier on where my drafts had gone to Helen Ball on the 7th. That was my job done. This meeting was on the 14th. Yes, you might come back and say, what about the meeting on the 24th? I said nothing. So I'm in that meeting. I can't really remember the detail around it. There was no crossover at all.
No crossover, but no specific barriers?
Well, my ethical barriers.
But no distinct, we've heard the phrase sterile corridor between your knowledge and either the drafting or the inquiry?
Well, as I said, that was all done and dusted from my point of view. I had moved on.
Would you accept that where the MPS was itself under accusation, as it was at the time of the Macpherson inquiry, the use of the MPS's covert informational advantage over the family and its supporters engaged issues surrounding equality of arms and potentially concerns about privilege?
There was no mention of the Dorian or Neville Lawrence in the meeting, and as far as anyone can determine, N81 never met Dorian or Neville Lawrence or ever spoke to them.
But of the campaign more widely, that information being fed back to the MPS, was that, in essence, was that an unfair advantage that the MPS had?
I can't comment on that. I mean, that is a matter for Special Branch, their chain of command, and they authorised N81's coverage and his intelligence gathering. That's a matter for them.
You met 81 on the 14th of August, and as we've discussed, the MPS submissions to the inquiry were submitted in September 98 with oral submissions on the 18th of September. If we could bring up those submissions, please, again. UCPI 36911. And if we could please turn to page 21. Which is the internal page 203. So that's B12 of the bundle. So this is the beginning of your chapter 19, Issues of Race.
Yes.
And it was one of the chapters that you were the lead draft on.
Yes.
If we turn on, please, to page 31. And at the bottom of that page, we can see...
Is that paragraph 31?
Sorry, it's page 50, paragraph 53. This is page 31 of the document that we're looking at. Thank you, that's very helpful to have them both up. And we can see here, paragraph 53, that the lack of sensitivity of some police officers also appears to have made it difficult for officers to understand the interest being taken in Stephen's murder by community groups in the area. There is also some evidence of politically motivated groups influencing communication between police and the Lawrence family. So this paragraph in the submissions expressly refers to the involvement of politically motivated groups influencing communication between the police and the family. So the involvement, influence and effect of politically motivated groups on the Lawrence campaign was plainly a pertinent issue to your work on the Stephen Lawrence Review, wasn't it?
Yes, this is evidence taken from the transcript.
But the topic itself...
Yeah.
I'm going to park the evidence that's taken from the transcripts.
Yeah.
But the topic itself was of relevance to Stephen Lawrence Review. Because it is included in the report.
It would be, yeah, it would be.
You met an officer who was involved with one of the politically motivated groups.
After this had been written, though. Yeah.
But you can't, whatever the chronology, you can't say that meeting HN81 had no relevance to the Stephen Lawrence Review team role that you had performed and perhaps were still performing.
I can, actually, yeah. So, yeah, I can.
So you can say it had no relevance?
Sorry, ask the question again.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
One of the points that you make in this submission is that there is evidence of politically motivated groups influencing the Lawrence family.
Yeah.
You meet a member of a group who's surrounding the campaign.
Yes.
Correct. The level of the extent of what MFJ may or may not have been able to influence in relation to the Lawrences is to an extent moot. isn't it? Because you don't know how influential they are until you meet the officer.
Yes, I had no idea. But remember, I don't even know that this officer was in Movement for Justice. He never told me.
But you discuss Movement for Justice and you discuss the Nation of Islam, don't you?
Yes.
I think you've answered my next question already, but did that text come about before or after your meeting with HN81?
Before, yeah. I mean, I did write this. I remember writing it. I actually remember discussing with John Sutherland whether it should go in, whether it's appropriate to go in. We were very concerned about the Lawrence family. We didn't want to do anything inappropriate. We felt it was relevant. There are sensitive parts of issues of race, Chapter 19, where there was quite a lot of discussion about whether it should go in or not go in. This is one of those areas, but we felt that because it was directly, it was from the transcript, we thought it was germane to put it in.
Now, would your meeting with HN81, with the information you gleaned from that, would that have tipped the balance one way or another? If there was still, it is in, even if you put it in the draft, you've not gone to print, have you?
No, but I've finished.
So you could come back and say, well, actually, I've spoken to these chaps. There's not an issue. We shouldn't even take that point.
No, because it's all I'm doing here is taking an extract from the transcript. That just to evidence the point at paragraph 53. But even then we put the caveat: the lack of sensitivity of some police officers. So we're being sensitive in how we address this issue. There is also some evidence of politically motivated groups influencing communication between police and the Lawrence family. But I think also, well,
if we just look at that, the foot of the page, we've got the quotation from Mrs. Lawrence.
Yes.
At the inquiry.
Yes.
And if you take a second to read that, with hindsight.
Yeah.
They said they were there for the family, but they were also there to highlight the ARA, and they weren't taking the family's feelings into consideration. And effectively, they get their marching orders, don't they? I think that's her evidence.
Yes, and we were aware that the Lawrences did their utmost to deter and push away any political influences. We were perfectly aware that they wanted justice for their son, and that was their priority. There
was a feeling within the MPS, wasn't there, that there was a risk of hijack?
There was, well, as was reported and as we discussed this morning, that there was political interference, and of course there were political groups who had committed violence.
Yeah.
So that's.
But the paragraph 53, what you are saying is there is some evidence of politically motivated groups influencing communication between the police and the Lawrence family.
Yes.
But Baroness Lawrence's evidence is effectively we weren't influenced by them. We had their support because they were useful. But they were she was clearly completely alive to any attempts to influence.
Yes, and I think that's a balanced view. I mean, both putting that quote in, those two quotes in, and then the paragraph. I think that's objective, balanced, and not in any way trying to undermine the Lawrence family at all.
If we could look, please, at HN81's report of the 23rd of July 1998, please. That is MPS 0720946. Page 11, please. So here we have an intelligence report dated the 24th of July 98. It is, the source of intelligence is Windmill Tilter, so that's the UCO that you met, HN81. Title, Stephen Lawrence Campaign. And this is an intelligence report from for an organising meeting arranged by the Lawrence Family Support Campaign on the 20th of July 98. The meeting's attended by members of MFJ and the Nation of Islam, as well as other supporters of the campaign, and it's chaired by Mr. Grover of the Southall Monitoring Project and Mr. Raymond of the Newham Monitoring Project. It covers a number of topics, and we'll come back to it a little later. But if we could look, please, at page 13 in the first paragraph. Suresh took this opportunity to explain his actions to the MFJ. He stated that the main problem facing the campaign was the refusal of both Neville and Doreen Lawrence to have anything to do with other groups. They felt they had been badly treated from the outset by such groups as the ANL, Gakara, and Anti-Racist Alliance, all of whom had tried to use the family. More recently, they had trouble from the Socialist Workers' Party, who have supposedly been booking venues, including Hackney Empire, in the name of the Lawrence family campaign, without the campaign group's knowledge or authority. In consequence, the family do not want such meetings or rallies to take place at all, and it is only by the efforts of Assad and Suresh, etc., that any authorised events have taken place. Now, this report, which is a little over a fortnight, 3 weeks, a fortnight before you meet HN81, you see refers to ARA as one of the groups that the family felt had treated them badly. It also sets out that Doreen and Neville Lawrence were not interested in associating themselves with those groups. Given the proximity in time, is it likely that this is the material that would have been discussed when you spoke to HN81?
No. I've never seen this report before.
In chapter 19, we've looked at the quotation which you've included from Baroness Lawrence's evidence.
Yes.
And we note that that does also refer to ARA, doesn't it?
Yes.
Was that inclusion prompted by your meeting? Was the inclusion of material from the inquiry talking about ARA and the influence on the Lawrences?
There's no connection between these two things at all. As I said, we were focused on what was going on in the inquiry, the transcript, and then the first murder investigation. There was no overlap. None of this was relevant at all to the submission, and we didn't see it, of course.
So the selection of that passage not specifically included as a result of your discussion with 81?
Absolutely not, no.
And the fact that it is in a note of... that topic is noted in an intelligence report of a UCO you meet 3 weeks later is purely coincidental?
Yes, it must be.
Please, can we turn to MPS 0728625 and page 3, please.
Forgive me, before you ask questions arising out of that, I want to ask something to do with the topic you've just raised. The report you've just been shown shows clearly that attempts were being made to influence the Lawrence campaign and to take it over for ulterior purposes, and they failed. Your report, the passage you were referred to, refers to some evidence of politically motivated groups influencing communication between police and the Lawrence family, and you cite one instance of that and another relating to it.
Yes.
If you'd had an intelligence report such as the one we've just seen on the screen, clearly reporting that there were attempts to influence the group and the campaign, what, if anything, would you have been able to do about it as regards putting it into the report?
Nothing, sir.
Because?
There was no remit. We were only in the submission we were only concerned about the transcript.
Because it wasn't in the evidence before the inquiry.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So if not in the evidence before the inquiry, nothing in your submissions.
That's correct, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So, yes, if we could now go to document B35, that's MPS 0728625, please, and page 3 of that document. Thank you very much. This document is dated the 2nd of October 2001. It is a recommendation for commendation by HN36 DCI Dell for HN81. The last sentence of the first paragraph, and the first paragraph sets out various aspects of HN81's deployment. And the final line is, the response of the MPS to the Macpherson report was informed by his assessments. And then if we could stay on the same page, but look at the third bullet point, please. The provision of a perspective to those charged with formulating the MPS position on key strategic issues. He was thus debriefed thoroughly by the Stephen Lawrence review team, as it considered how the MPS might regain the confidence of the black community, how it might assess the potential for disorder by sections of that community, and what might be consequences of sustained political pressure on the MPS from hard left and other groups not well disposed to the police. Now, I appreciate that this is a document written a few years after your meeting and written by DCI Dell. Let's start off with the basics. Is this a document you would have seen?
No.
Do you accept that it is likely that the reference to HN81 being debriefed thoroughly by the Stephen Lawrence review team is a reference to your meeting with HN81?
I couldn't say, but possibly. But I mean, it's not true. In
No,
terms of the context.
and it's an exaggeration, is it?
Yes, it is.
Were you asked to contribute to the recommendation for commendation?
No, I wasn't. No.
Was it correct, as Mr. Dell suggests, that the MPS's response was informed by HN81's assessments?
Clearly not.
This document, even 3 years or so after your meeting, still refers to the debrief being with the Stephen Lawrence review team. It appears the impression remained with the SDS that it was with that team. Was that correct?
No.
I'm going to look at propriety.
Mm-hmm.
Please can we bring up your witness statement? UCPI 37511. Thank you very much. Page 8 and paragraph 27, please. In terms of my meeting with HN81, my position remains that I had no reason to believe that the meeting was inappropriate because, as far as I was aware, the meeting was relevant to my forward-looking work with CO24 rather than my work with the SLRT. However, the erroneous spy in the Lawrence camp narrative was picked up extensively by the media and politically as a result of the Ellison report, and in my view set in train a sequence of events that has required me to repeatedly profess my innocence over a period of over a decade, fight to protect my reputation, and at one point protect my job by instructing lawyers. It has also meant that the truth about the meeting and HN81's role has been obscured. You say you have no reason to believe the meeting was inappropriate as it related to your forward-looking work, but would you accept it also related to your ongoing work at the Stephen Lawrence Review team too?
No, I wouldn't accept that.
even if you're correct and you were part of CO24, would the meeting not have been inappropriate given Mr. Grieve's personal involvement, giving evidence to the inquiry, and his participation in submission-focused meetings?
No, it was appropriate as regards the evolving remit of CO24.
Having had time to reflect and also to see the evidence that this inquiry has heard about HN81's deployment, do you still maintain that it was appropriate for you to meet HN81?
I maintain still, sir, that it was appropriate for me to attend it. I can't comment on the reporting of N81 and the merit or justification for that or otherwise.
You disagree in your statement with the characterisation of HN81 as a spy in the Lawrence camp. Yeah. On what basis do you do so?
Well, so this was obviously a key finding of the Lawrence review. There were two key findings, in fact, probably the two most important key findings of the review I don't believe were true. This is the first one, and the second one we covered earlier on, which is that the meeting was convened in order to inform submissions. But as regards spy in the Lawrence family camp, that's the phrase that was used in Mr. Ellison's review. As best I can understand, N81 was firstly not a spy. He was an undercover officer tasked. I can't speak about the tasking, but he was a tasked police officer into a group called Movement for Justice. The phrase Lawrence family camp I don't believe is supported by the evidence, but clearly so you will have seen significantly more than I have. But I think it's an inappropriate phrase to use, if I might be so blunt.
Why?
Well, I don't know where. Well, the Lawrences were not running a campsite, as best I understand. They were trying to achieve justice for their son, and N81 had not met Doreen or Neville Lawrence, as I understand, nor ever spoken to them. And this phrase was used, obviously, as a key finding in the inquiry, and was indeed picked up, as you've read out there, as extended by the media and by the Home Secretary referred to it the very next day in a statement she made. And it did indeed set in train a series of events where everyone assumed, I think, sir, if I might say, the public, I think, still believe, I think, that this is the truth. And I think it's very important that this inquiry overturns this review finding. In regard to specifics, we've not mentioned Operation Magma, but I believe that the Magma Gold Group, which you might speak to Commander Janet Williams next week, who chaired the Gold Group, met in 2002 to discuss allegations that had been made by Peter Francis that the Met had deployed an undercover officer into the Lawrence family to smear them. That was thoroughly investigated, as I understand it, by NH53 in 2002-3 under the jurisdiction of the Gold Group, and found that he'd never been tasked along those lines.
If I just pause you there. Those are the conclusions of HN53,
yes,
then Detective Inspector within the Special Demonstration Squad.
Yes.
So they are effectively an internal conclusion by a unit itself under scrutiny within the Metropolitan Police.
Yes, but I understand.
I just think it's important to set that context.
Yes, indeed, I accept that. But I think it's important that the inquiry publish that review. I think the investigation was extensive, and the report that NH53 produced was extensive. Now, I didn't know about the Magna Gold Group. I became aware of it after the Ellison review, and my legal team wrote to the Commissioner to basically to point out that Mr. Ellison had clearly not received the Magma paperwork, because it hadn't featured in Mr. Ellison's review.
But again, Mr. Ellison was there to draw his own conclusions, wasn't he? He was there to look at the evidence and draw his conclusions.
Yes, but
and not necessarily, and I don't necessarily wish to speak for him, but again, for clarity, it's not necessarily Mr. Ellison to look at the conclusions of another when he is himself tasked with that review, is he?
Well, I think if the inquiry publishes this investigation, then I think it's for others to judge and yourself to judge whether it was germane. It's my view, and this is the view that my legal team took when they wrote to the Commissioner, that this material should have been disclosed to Mr. Ellison. Now, he was made aware of it by the Metropolitan Police, the officers said that they would disclose it to him, but then he either didn't have it disclosed to him, which I think is what happened, or he saw it but didn't refer to it in his review. I would find it extraordinary that he wouldn't reference that material if he hadn't seen it. So it's my contention that he almost certainly hadn't contention that it was germane to his review, and that the findings of the Ellison review were done in the absence of very significant material. The other points I would make, if I might just extend a bit more, there was the findings of other reviews. Sorry,
just so we're clear, I'm wanting to get your intelligence, not necessarily the overall survey of evidence that has happened at various points since 1998, but specifically on the description of the spy in the Lawrence camp narrative, which you take exception to in your witness statement.
Yes, I do.
That I think you have explored there.
Yes,
in relation to a further question in relation to that, if I may, do you disagree with the contention that reporting on groups around a justice campaign is intelligence about the campaign's political environment, its supporters, its allies, and its perceived risks?
I can't comment on that.
But you take issue with there being an issue with a spy in the Lawrence camp narrative.
Lawrence family camp.
But is it, in the Lawrence family camp, but is it not also, in your view, is it not as egregious to report upon effectively the environment around that family campaign?
Well, if the reporting was, and again, I can't judge, but in the inquiry here can judge, but if the reporting was as per tasked around Movement for Justice, and it was Movement for Justice activities that were being reported on, then that is justified. But you will be better able to judge than I will around the proportionality of what was reported by that undercover officer. So
you certainly draw a distinction between reporting on the family and the family campaign and then the wider campaign.
Yes.
Is that fair? Would you have met the UCO if you knew beforehand that they were a source close to the Lawrence family itself?
Well, that's a hypothetical question. I'm not able to judge what he was reporting on. So,
let's put it this way.
It's
I don't
not clearly
want
not
to deal with
appropriate.
hypotheticals too much.
Yeah.
But if you turned up at Bob Lambert's house, you sat down with 81, and he says, "Yes, I sit around. I have tea with Doreen Lawrence every day, and we discuss this case." Would you have got up and left? Where's the trigger point at which you would have said, "This is a wholly inappropriate meeting"?
Well, there's no justification for reporting on Doreen and Neville Lawrence whatsoever.
But if they were, for example, an intimate member of the family campaign, if they're right in the hub.
Sorry, the undercover officer.
If the undercover officer was right in the hub, meeting with the family and making decisions, would that have been enough for you to say this is inappropriate? I shouldn't be here.
In those terms, yes, but I'm not able to judge.
But as it was, your evidence was even having met HN81.
Yeah.
You didn't know which group he was deployed into.
That's correct.
Albeit he was able to give information about MFJ and Nation of Islam.
Well, we talked about Nation of Islam FJ. I'm not sure he gave any particular information about them.
If he had given you information that he was involved in the groups within the wider campaign surrounding the Lawrence inquiry, would you have considered that an inappropriate meeting?
It depends on his tasking, what he's, and what the, there's lots of designations we've got in relation to the word Lawrence is used.
Well, can I ask you this?
Yeah.
Did when you sat down with HN81, did you seek to understand what his tasking was?
No.
Why not?
Because that wasn't relevant to what I thought the meeting was about.
But if you didn't understand what the tasking was, how could you have effectively asked him to provide you all the information that might have been pertinent to your work?
Well, the risk of repetition, I didn't know what the meeting was about.
But by the time you're there,
Yeah.
you have an idea, surely.
Well, yes, and yes, a background briefing as we described, yeah.
And you don't want to necessarily, surely you didn't want to sit there and not contribute and not come away with something of utility to you.
Yes.
I'm just struggling to see how you could have done that if you didn't know the group into which he was deployed, or at least the detail, and therefore the access to detail that he had.
No, he didn't have to tell me what group he was deployed to. Undercover officers never do. And that wasn't a surprise to me, but I remember coming away thinking I'm none the wiser as to what group he's actually in, as we've discussed.
But what in an overview, what were you aware that he had been doing, even if he didn't tell you the name of the group? How close was he to the wider Lawrence campaign?
I had no idea whatsoever. And obviously I've seen strands and bits from the inquiry, but at that time I had no idea.
It seems, if I may, a slightly incurious approach for a detective at a meeting like this.
Well, so be it. None of us are perfect.
So I'm not trying to be glib. I'm just understanding that you are someone who deals with intelligence.
Yes.
Who obtains information that's relevant.
Yes.
And processes it and takes it forward. And it seems from your evidence today that didn't happen. Is that fair?
Yes. Yes. I mean, it wasn't a very significant meeting.
Please, could we return to MPS 0720946, page 13, third paragraph, please. Thank you very much. So here, this is the report we looked at earlier from HN81.
Yeah.
And here we can see the report is showing the Lawrence family's views, and this is in relation to attendees at a social event. Suresh further stated that the Lawrences wanted Friday's social event to be just that, and therefore did not want those whom they felt had insulted them to attend. This is reporting on the Lawrence family's views on a social event for the campaign supporters. Is that not reporting from the Lawrence camp?
Firstly, I mean, I don't know whether I should be challenging the word camp, but it seems an inappropriate word to use in a formal report to the Home Secretary. That's my issue around the word camp, and I take issue with the phrase "spy in the Lawrence family camp."
I think that's accepted, and I apologise. Maybe I should rephrase the question. Yeah. But this is from the heart of the campaign, isn't it? And it is personal reporting in relation to the view of now Baroness Lawrence.
Well, of course, I've never seen this before.
But it does go, doesn't it, to the access that HN81 had? at around the time that you met him?
I don't know when was the report done.
This is July. This is the end of July, I think, 24th of July, 1998.
Yeah. And sorry, your question is that what is?
Is this not reporting from the heart of the Lawrence campaign and on the Lawrence family?
I can't comment. I don't think it's fair to me to comment on any of the intelligence that he's reported on, because I've not seen it before, and it doesn't look right. It looks like it's beyond any remit, but I'm not sure I'm qualified to actually comment on this.
Okay, well, I'll try and take the next few questions as quickly as I can, but I do have a few more questions on this document. If we could look at the second paragraph, at the end of the fifth line, Suresh went on to explain that Doreen and Neville have in reality separated, and that they only continued together as a front for the campaign. Doreen, in fact, wishes to wind the campaign up at this point and simply await the findings of the inquiry. Neville is more open to continuing, but only until the inquiry releases its findings. So this is reporting personal information about Doreen and Neville Lawrence, as well as reporting directly on the family campaign, isn't it?
It looks like that, yes. Well, I mean, it looks like it, yes, it does look like that.
If you had known this was the type of reporting and type of access that HN81 had had at the time that you met him, would you still consider this an appropriate deployment and an appropriate meeting?
Yeah, I'm inclined to say yes, but it is a hypothetical question, so in the context is everything. But
inclined to say yes, that you consider it would have still been?
No, inclined to say yes. I would have been concerned about it, and it would have affected me meeting him.
Just out of fairness to you, you've mentioned a couple of times that you haven't seen this document. It is in the document bundle that has been provided to you.
Yes, no, what I meant is, I have seen it from your rule 9 disclosure, but I'd never seen it.
No, okay, understand. You didn't see it at the time.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Quite understand that.
Yeah.
Putting to one side what you knew about the meeting, what you knew before the meeting, I'm going to suggest to you that by the time you'd had the meeting, that you knew there was a UCO in groups adjacent to the Lawrence campaign.
No.
Surely that must have been the logical inference from what you did learn.
No.
Given that you have accepted, I think, that the information that's recorded in Bob Lambert's note is an embellishment, but it is of the truth.
No.
And do you accept that there was information given of the Nation of Islam and MFJ, and they are in that campaign surrounding?
Sorry, no, not that either. As I said, there was mention and talk about the Nation of Islam and the Movement for Justice. It could well just as easily be me mentioning it rather than the undercover officer. It was not, he was not passing on intelligence as such.
Well, the difficulty is we don't know what he said and you can't remember.
Yes, quite.
Because there's no contemporaneous note of the other side of that conversation, yes. which I think you accept must have happened. There must have been some information coming from the operative. I presume you didn't go to meet him at Bob Lambert's house for you to talk at him for an hour and then go your own way.
Well, first of all, I didn't know it was Bob Lambert's house.
No, sorry, I don't think that's the. Yeah, but you didn't go to meet the UCO in order for you to tell him to download your information to him.
I didn't know what the purpose of the meeting was and whether it was for him to brief me or me to brief him or both or either.
Did you not stop to think, having been at the interview? I think we've covered that you didn't. There were no triggers going. Nothing that triggered you thinking this was inappropriate. Would you have been happy for details of your meeting to have been made known to William McPherson at the time?
Would I have been happy? I wouldn't have a view on that. It was not my write-up, but that's a matter for special branch.
Would you have been happy for details of the meeting to have been made known to the Lawrence family at the time?
Well, in terms of the meeting, there was nothing that would have in any way upset the Lawrence family.
Even as a presentational point, you think it would still have been fine if...
Well, in terms of as I understood the purpose of the meeting, yes.
And after the meeting?
Likewise, yeah. I mean, I literally walked away from this meeting. I mean, it just carried on a normal day. It was not of any import to me whatsoever. It was a very, short background briefing, and it's astonishing and rather ironic that it's become, so focused upon.
And you didn't, when you met him, think that Sir William Macpherson ought to have been informed about HN1's deployment?
No, I think it's really important. I think that to say it in summary, I don't think there was anything wrong with this meeting at all. I think the problem with this meeting is the write-up of the meeting, which is then informed, embellished and untruths, then going into further briefing notes, and then also being used and drawn upon by Mr. Allison, who's seeing this as evidence. I can understand why he would do that. But the difficulty with this briefing is only the write-up. It's not actually the briefing. It's not actually the meeting itself. It's the write-up of the meeting that's the problem.
Did you consider the potential disaster for police-community relations had HN81 been exposed?
No, because it's not my meeting. It's not for me to consider those things.
But you didn't think this is a highly contentious issue, potentially the focal point of the Metropolitan Police Service?
No, it was an ordinary
We have
background.
an undercover officer in that in that area. In Brixton, in a justice campaign, or at least somewhere near to it.
Well, our sentiment, my sentiment, was laudable. We were trying to get ahead of the findings of the inquiry. I obviously knew in particular the issues. We, CO24, wanted to address those issues. This background briefing, approved by Special Branch, was what it was on the face of it, of not great import. There were a lot of other things that were probably much more significant than this meeting.
If I could take you finally this afternoon to your witness statement, UCPI 37511, and pages 18 and 19, paragraphs 44 and 45, please. Thank you. Paragraph 44 says, I had about end of the fifth line of 44A, it says, I had no reason to believe that the information was either sensitive or of questionable justification. I simply attended, when requested, what I considered to be a legitimate meeting with N81 on the 14th of August 1998. Beyond that, I did not have any access to Special Branch files or intelligence throughout the time I was working on the Lawrence review team, and later with CO24. It did not seem to be within my knowledge, power, or remit to report the existence of HN81 further up the chain of command. What did you mean by it not being within your knowledge, power, or remit to report the existence of HN81 further up the chain of command?
I had nothing to do with his deployment. I mean, I had no responsibility for SDS or his tasking. He was authorised, obviously, by senior officers in the Special Branch. It was a matter for them.
Could you have reported up had you had concerns about the deployment?
Yes, if I'd had concerns.
And presumably you didn't do so because ultimately you considered at the time that there was no issue.
Quite, yes.
And I take it that remains your view today.
It does indeed, yeah.
So is that a convenient moment to leave it for the day?
Certainly. I'm afraid it means you will have to return tomorrow to
Okay, sir.
finish your evidence. Before we rise today, may I ask you, I'm afraid, more questions about this meeting?
Yeah, okay.
When you attended the meeting, you had just finished your role as a draftsman of part of the MPS response in the Macpherson inquiry, and you had just taken up a new role setting up CO24. You were asked by an officer more senior than yourself, Mr. Lambert, to meet a special branch officer. Correct?
Correct, sir.
Thank you. Sorry, a nod of the head is not recorded on the transcript.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You knew, therefore, in advance of the meeting that you were being asked to meet an intelligence gathering officer.
That's correct.
What did you understand the purpose of the meeting to be before it started?
As best I can recollect, a background meeting on issues relating to public disorder, public order, and some of the issues that we were facing around race crime and the overlap and the nexus between the two. But I wasn't. I also had in my mind, do they want me to brief on institutional racism? Do they want me to? Because that was something that I've been working on. Is that something they want to know about?
Why would an intelligence officer want you to brief him on institutional racism?
Well, that was what was on my mind, sir. That wasn't necessarily a rational thought, but that's just that's what I'd been working on, and I wondered if they wanted a background briefing from me on that issue.
When the meeting had taken place and you had spent an hour or so talking to the intelligence officer, what conclusion did you draw about the purpose from his point of view of the meeting?
I don't think I drew any conclusion from what he said. You know, it's difficult for me to judge what he's been told and what he's been told the purpose of the meeting is. So perhaps neither of us knew what the purpose of the meeting was.
Did you explain to him anything about institutional racism?
It certainly came up. So I can't remember in what detail. It certainly came up.
And did he explain to you anything about the information, the intelligence that he was gathering?
Very little, and very little, actually, to be honest. I can't be specific on that. I've got to be very careful I'm accurate on this, but some mention of the unrest that was coming out of the inquiry in terms of coverage, and community tension high, those kind of sentiments. Nothing specific. We did, as we've discussed, we did mention the political interference, Nation of Islam, Movement for Justice, but he wasn't very forthcoming, particularly. He probably didn't understand my remit, that I can't speak for him. So.
Thank you. That explains your understanding of what occurred. We will resume, I think, tomorrow at 9:30, from what I believe to be the case.
I think we resume at 9:30, but I think Mr. Walton resumes tomorrow afternoon.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I was
yes.
about to explain. Helen Steele is going to resume her evidence tomorrow, and if I've understood the position correctly, she's going to resume at 9:30. Your conclusion
I'm being
will
told
take
that is
place when
correct.
she's finished.
Okay, sir, thank you.
I'm sorry, I cannot tell you when that will be.
That's fine, that's okay.
Thank you.